Hi everyone, this week's lesson is going to focus on the order of operations, a concept which many of you are probably already familiar with. You may have heard the phrase PEMDAS or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally to help you remember the order of operations. P stands for parentheses. And you will notice if you have multiple sets of parentheses, you want to start from the innermost parentheses and work outward. So we're going to make a note, simplify within parentheses first. The E stands for exponents, all right? If you have anything raised to a power, that has to be simplified next. For example, if we have 2 to the third power or 4 to the second power, those things must be simplified before we can move into the next phase of the order of operations. M and D stand for multiplication and division. So there's a reason why they're written on the same line here. And basically, we multiply and divide in order from left to right. This happens at the same time. So if division happens to come first, you can complete the division before multiplication. So even though in PEMDAS multiply comes before division, we actually want to multiply and divide at the same time from left to right. Then the A and the S stand for addition and subtraction. So we have addition and subtraction. And the rule for that is exactly the same. We will add and subtract in order from left to right. Once you have that written down, you now have the steps that we are going to follow in order to simplify using the order of operations. So if you flip the page over, you will notice that on page 2, we have several examples here we want to simplify by using the order of operations. Now please know when we say simplify, we want to get down to one final answer. So for the first two, I actually want you to show each step. I know some calculators can perform the order of operations and you can just type this all in, but I do want you to show each step as you're going through so I can see you have an understanding of the process. So for number 1, the first thing that should jump out at us is there are parentheses. And we want to simplify within those parentheses. If you need help with the division, you can utilize a calculator, but hopefully you may know that 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay? When you get the parentheses down to one single number, the parentheses can go away, and now I see addition and I see division. In PEMDAS, our division needs to come next. So we have 9 divided by 3. That would give us 3. And once we're down to one final operation, we will add those two numbers together, and 6 plus 3 would equal 9. For example number 2, I see parentheses again. and more specifically, inside the parentheses, there are exponents. So I'm actually going to include both of those here in our first step. So we have to continue to follow the order of operations even within the parentheses. So we know we're going to start with the parentheses, and we are going to start by simplifying this 4 squared. So 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. I'm going to change this x, which means multiplication, to a dot so we don't confuse it with a variable. And I'm going to bring down 6 divided by 3. There are still numbers within the parentheses. So step number 2 is to continue simplifying within the parentheses. 16 minus 14 is 2. Now we have to multiply and divide from left to right in order. So I notice 5 times 2 is the first multiplication problem that I come across. So I will multiply 5 times 2 first. And then as I continue across, I see a second multiplication problem. 10 times 6 is 60. And last, I have a division sign to get my final answer, which in this case would be 20. Okay. Now, I typically don't make you write down the actual steps you're performing. You're just going to show me meaning the words. You are going to show me the steps that you are writing in each case as you perform each step in the process. But you do not have to write the steps in terms of writing the words down of what you're performing. So you'll notice in the last examples here, I switched the directions a little bit and I wrote we're going to simplify each expression using the order of operations, and we are to show each step. So we want to look for parentheses first, and in example 3, I definitely see some parentheses here. So we're going to begin in the parentheses, and then more specifically by simplifying this exponent. So 2 to the third power is actually equivalent to 8. And I'm going to continue to bring everything else down in the order that it's written. Do not mix up the order as you go. Okay, continue inside those brackets. 3 times 2 is 24. And now we can get rid of the brackets but keep the parentheses. We will now add the two numbers in the parentheses. So 24 plus 48 is 72 as well. And now one last step gets us down to a real easy answer. 72 minus 72 is 0. Okay. Moving on, example number 4, a little bit tricky because you have this thing that looks like a fraction. So we're actually, in order to simplify this, we have to start with the top. We have to add 34 plus 26, and that would give us 60. At this point, now we can really follow the order of operations. So if we're thinking PEMDAS, there's no parentheses, but there are exponents. We're going to simplify 6 squared next. So we'll take and bring down our 60 divided by 15. 6 squared is 6 times 6, which is 36. And now I'll continue on over division and addition. We divide before we add. 60 divided by 15 is 4. And then we will add 4 to our 36, which will give us 40. Now, one of the concepts that we talked about in the first lesson was evaluating expressions. In this case, I have given you a number to plug in for x. So we're going to use that skill, and we are going to plug in 6 anywhere we see an X in this example. And I always recommend, especially when there's exponents involved, to plug those numbers into parentheses when you substitute into an expression. In this case, we're going to begin in those parentheses and we're going to start with those exponents. Remember, you can utilize the calculator on your computers if that's helpful whenever you see these exponents. So 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. 3 to the third, 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Continue in the parentheses. We will be adding 36 and 27 together. That gives us 63. And then be very careful here. You have addition and multiplication. Please remember you have to multiply before you add. 6 times 63 gives us a pretty large number. We end up with 378. And then as we add these two numbers together, 4 plus 378 gives us a final answer of 382. That should complete your order of operation notes for today. Please make sure you return with them to class, whatever day that might be, and we will continue to work on reviewing the order of operations with everybody at that time.